welcome to another episode of the Superbold podcast, where I dig into people's lives and their bold moves and maybe the times they hesitated and the impact that they have on the world. And I find interesting people all the time, and I've got somebody really interesting today, Sarah Anane, and she is going to teach us about how we combine our habits to our identity and how that has become her career, and the methodology that she has behind that. And so we're going to dig right into that. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Good. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So there's a lot to developing habits. There's a lot of talk about it right now, but obviously it's important, I think, to that we develop good habits, because it's so easy to develop bad ones. That they seem easier. I don't understand why. But, talk about the work that you do. Are you working with companies or individuals, or both, as you're coaching them on habits?
Sure. Yeah, I do one-on-one coaching, and I specialize in habits and identity because habits are what you do every day, right? And what you do every day makes you who you are. So if you want to achieve any goal or really become your highest self, if you focus on your habits, then that will take you to where you need to be. And what happens is a lot of people just focus on their habits. They just try to focus on what they do. But if instead you approach it from the identity level and instead look at who you are, then the habits will come easier, right? Because it's just naturally to who you are. So take, for instance, the New Year's resolution. It's quite known that, the third or fourth week of January, everyone seems to fall off from their New Year's resolutions. Well, an example of that is the gyms are packed, right? Everyone's trying to lose weight. Everyone wants to lose 10 pounds. So they try to lose 10 pounds. If instead of trying to lose 10 pounds, you tried to become a fit person, so you said, I'm a fit person, and you started doing what fit people do, and you started seeing yourself as a fit person, then naturally you go to the gym every day. You eat nutritious foods. If you take walks after your meals, that's what fit people do. So my approach is really to transform your day and transform what you do. So by the end of the coaching program, your day looks completely different. And to work on any bad habits, removing any bad habits, replacing them with good habits, and then become the person that you're looking to be, your highest self through that. And the identity work is really like the staple of changing those habits.
Oh, okay. So I'm getting it, because I do think that's a very interesting and impactful approach, because what most of us do is it's the same thing. It's like, I'm gonna, fortunately not many people smoke anymore, but that quitting smoking is really hard. But if you say I'm going to quit smoking, what you're going to do is think about cigarettes all day. Whereas if you say, this year, I'm going to be substantially healthier. I'm going to live, I'm going to take care of my body this year. I'm a person that thinks about their health first, or something like that. Then that's the shift that you're talking about. And so when you're coaching somebody, how does it start? Let's say you're coaching me. How do you evaluate how off course I am?
Well, anything. It's really a self-evaluation. My coaching is not to tell people what to do. I'm more of like a mirror for people. And so we start by taking a look at your life. We do a very long onboarding assessment, which, my clients seem to not necessarily enjoy doing because they have to dig pretty deep. But so they're telling me what are the habits that, are holding you back? What are the habits that you'd like to do? It's a full kind of assessment of how they see themselves and things that they're doing and what their day consists of, what their goals are, whether that be relationships, business, so we kind of we really take a look at the gap between where they are and where they want to be, right? So now that we have that gap, I can take a look and assess and talk it through them. Okay, well, now how do we get to the person that you want to be? How do we bridge that gap? And then we really create a plan, which, I do give input a lot on my process of what I went through, which I'm sure is something that we'll get into, kind of why I got into all of this. So yeah, I take them through the process that I went through to really change my habits.
So yeah, let's I want to know how you got started on this, because it's a very interesting thing to coach people on. It's very specific, and certainly can be very impactful. So Sarah, how did you get started doing it?
Get into it. Well, so I was a commercial real estate broker. I've been in commercial real estate for 15 years. I just really everyone asks, what happened? What made you decide that you really wanted to change things around? I guess to start from, I'll give you the point of the story. So I changed everything that I do, my habits, my values, my beliefs, everything. I completely rewired my mind and how I think and how I act in 17 days. To go to the beginning of that, everyone asks like, well, what happened? What happened? Because it seems to be that you need like a near-death accident, or, you have some big unpackable thing, there's a death, and you come to. But really, I had turned 35. I've been in real estate for a long time. I'd always been really very happy, fairly. But I did have bad habits. I drank and I smoked. And I would say I lived like a stereotypical commercial real estate life. We do happy hours, and, it's high pressure jobs. So we tend to, work hard, play hard, kind of our motto.
Mm.
And I turned 35, and I just kind of thought, well, I don't know. I feel like there's more out. I feel like I'm leaving something on the table, and my health had started declining, not terribly, but just, acid reflux, and I'm hungover, and there's just, it's getting to the point where I wasn't 20 anymore. I could like just bounce back. The hangovers were lasting 3 days, and I've been smoking for like 10 years. So I just started getting really into psychology, neuroscience, habit work, and I started creating this plan. And so I said, I made it's crazy looking back at my journals, because I got really heavy into journaling. I wouldn't even know if it was a 17-day transformation if I didn't have my journals, because I had tracked everything. But anyways, I created a plan.
I want to understand that. So you don't know if you would have gotten it done in 17 days if you hadn't already been journaling, or that you were journaling in the 17 days?
Sorry, I wouldn't have known how long it had taken, or, that it was 17 days if I didn't have all of those journals documenting everything.
Okay.
But after looking back, I wouldn't even know what date I had started all of this if I didn't have everything documented through journals. So that was it's really cool to go looking back and see how my mind was thinking, because I was writing so much about my thoughts and the process that I went through. And those really helped me to create my process, to pull out, to extract what it really took to go through this. So I'm journaling. I decided I'm going to change my habits, smoking, the drinking, all of this. It's really not going to take me where I want to go. And I changed. So I was drinking, I was smoking. I'll tell you what I stopped. I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, I stopped watching TV, which, I'm not against TV, but for me, I just didn't really feel good after I'd watched TV or did a Netflix binge, that was a personal thing. But I stopped watching TV. I started waking up at 4 a.m. I replaced all of those bad habits, for me, that I thought were wastes of my potential. And I replaced them with good habits. So all of these mindfulness practices that I had been studying that I had never done, affirmations, visualization, meditation, and the combination of removing all of these bad habits and replacing them with these good habits that were really helping me focus, get centered and start to think differently, was so transformational that it was just, I mean, I was on an all new high, it was really crazy. So then I started going down the rabbit hole because I'm like, everyone needs to experience this. I kind of went underground for about 6 months and started putting this process together. How can I coach other people? Started doing trial coaching, tested on other people. And I decided I was going to start helping other people do this and get out of commercial real estate.
Wow. So you get out of the commercial real estate habit too, which, it's so interesting that I think there really is something to the misconception that you figured out by action that, oh, well, if I've got to do something, if I've got to make changes in myself, it's going to take a while, it's going to take, it's going to be gradual, and it doesn't have to be. You can say, that's it, I'm done with this. And there's a great expression that says, I think it was Mark Twain that said it, and he says, I can give up things, I just can't moderate them, basically. It's like, I can stop drinking, I just can't drink one drink. I can't go to a cocktail party and have one drink or have one cigarette or, or watch one episode, I guess, is because of your binging issue.
And that's actually a great point. I'm glad you brought that up because for me, I've always been like all or nothing personality. I'm like a high affect person. So for me, I was like, I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to stop smoking because I've never been like the type of, why have one drink, and I'm not going to like a casual smoker. Like if I'm going to smoke, I'm a smoker. So for me, it was much easier to just cut everything out. Like with classic habit work is just to take it out of your environment. If you don't want to snack on chocolates, like don't have it in the kitchen. But that was my personal answer. If I don't want to drink, if I don't want to be hungover, it's easier to not drink than to try and test the waters. But I did forget, the reason why I was able to do it so quickly, why I coach on identity is because during my studying and during my plan, I had noticed from learning about psychology and neuroscience and that when it got down to it, it seemed like identity was really at the core of everything, something that like no one really talks about, but that was like the gateway, like the shortcut. So for me, when I started from day one, it was, I don't drink, I don't smoke. It wasn't like I quit drinking or I quit smoking or I'm trying to quit. It was, no, I don't do that. Why would you offer me a drink? I don't drink. Even if people thought I was crazy, I go, no, I don't drink. So it was really like an identity level thing. And that's how I approached the whole situation. I'm a morning person. My affirmations in the morning were, I'm a morning person. Because I was not a morning person. I was the type that snoozed for like hours. I mean, it's still very hard for me to wake up. Like I have this ridiculous alarm that's like a hazard sound, and then you have to do math problems just because for me, I've never been able to like wake up clear. It's still very difficult, but I do feel like a morning person. It's just waking up like this, I feel like is next level.
Yeah, my dad always leapt out of bed with the alarm. I think it was because he was in the army. I don't, but I was always shocked at how he flew out of bed as soon as the alarm went off. He was like, boom, he was on his feet. And, and especially as I was a teenager and stuff, because as a teenager, you want to sleep 10, 15 hours a day. But so did you say you get up at 4 a.m.? Is that what your idea of your morning person behavior? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah. Well, to be fair, it started at 5, but then as I really loved the mornings. I was like, I love the morning so much. I'm going to try 4 because I've got this perfect routine now where I can do 90 minutes of, well, an hour of my me time, my priming, I'm sure you know this, my affirmations, my visualization, my really like get centered. And then I get 90 minutes of the hardest task for the day. And then I can do an hour long sunrise walk perfectly at 6:30 when it comes up. So the 4 a.m. for me is just transcendental. It's I've tried to, when I wake up at 5, I feel like I can't get that nice 90 minutes of the hardest task. And I just feel so amazing by the time that I'm done with my sunrise walk that, yeah, I love it.
Now, you know that you're technically not a morning person. You're a night person.
Yeah.
That's 4 a.m. is nighttime. Okay. So, I'm for many years, I was a night owl, and it actually shifted in COVID because there was nothing else to do. I couldn't. And so I started, I was working on 2 different books. One was fiction, one was nonfiction. And I started to shift when I would write, because I used to write late at night, and then I started to write during the day, and I just started getting up earlier. Now I do like to get up early, but it's in the morning, Sarah. It's 6 a.m. It's
6
which
a.m.,
yeah. But
that's great. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I actually, I live on the East Coast now. I lived in California for a long time, and I really like watching the sunrise now. It's really an amazing thing to get to do every day. And I gotta say, the first 60 years of my life or so, I didn't see a lot of sunrises unless I had stayed up. Yeah, saw more than a few sunrises that way. But yeah. But I love this idea of, it's so simple and so clear. I don't drink. That is, it's a self-definition. I'm a person who doesn't drink. So it's not, I don't have to think it. And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to think about whether you're going to have a drink or 2 or another drink or whatever. You're just not having one.
Right.
And we're not encouraging people to give up all of their creature comforts and stuff like that, but examine them. I think part of it is the question I would ask people who are listening and curious about what Sarah's talking about is, how much control over you does that habit have? And are you okay with that? Because that seems to be the challenge. I like coffee. I like regular doses of coffee. Could I stop it? Yep. Don't want to, don't feel the need to. People say like, oh, you got to have your coffee. I said, no, I do it because I like it. But if I had a doctor that said, you can't have any more coffee, it's not good for you. Because some people, stuff is not good for them. And other people, like, they can do all sorts of terrible things to their body, and it doesn't make any difference. I have a friend of mine, his father-in-law is 104. He still eats bacon every morning. Okay. That's DNA winning out basically over your willingness to take care of yourself, I guess. But yeah. So what other self definitions do you see people have that are harming them or holding them back? And how do you translate that for them? Because I think that's what you're doing, right? Is saying, here's another way. Instead of saying, I'm going to quit smoking, here's what you say. Give me some other examples of other people's habits that are not benefiting them. I mean, because that's kind of it. Is like, if the habit's not benefiting you, then maybe you want to stop.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought it up, and I think you said it perfectly. If the habit is controlling you, then, it's time that you take control back. And really, so I focus on habits, because, if you have great habits, then you're bound to have a great life, right? But also because changing your habits is very difficult. Um, Many people find it hard to change even just one small habit, right? So when you go through this process of changing all of your habits and changing some of the hardest habits or habits that have had control over you for so long, like for me, for alcohol and cigarettes, it's been so hard to quit, or, to, just have one drink and call it a night. And when you finally stop and learn that you have that control, it's so intoxicating. You feel like you get so much power because it's like, oh, I have control. I tell my mind and body what to do. And then through that process, you really learn to take control in like all areas of your life. So I'm really glad you brought that up. I think you said it perfectly. To answer your question, some other identities, I think, it's funny because through the process, there's especially, I'm a men's coach. I really specialize in men. I've coached women, but I noticed that
we have a lot more bad habits than women anyway.
I don't know about that. I think we're pretty equal. But I'll find that a lot of times we're our own biggest critic, right? And so, like, the inner critic is one of the bad habits that I would say I work on with every client, and I work on myself. It's a never-ending struggle. I think that we all have to take control of. But when you switch that inner dialogue to be like your best friend and hype man, instead of, preventing you through taking action by fear or that you're not good enough, that's a pretty big habit that we focus on. It's funny because a lot of us have identities, right? And we're our own biggest critic. This is what I was trying to say, is that sometimes men will think they're not a confident person, or they're not, very confident. And from my point of view, I'll be like, well, why do you think that? That for this, and this reason, I don't know any people that aren't confident that would go do that freely. And it's kind of like, oh, well, yeah. And so as you start to like open their eyes to really realize like, well, yeah, why do I think that? Then it's so easy for them to adopt. It's just like they've been criticizing themselves for so long, trying to find the bad, that they haven't seen the good. Right? I don't know if you've experienced that, but yeah, confidence, inner dialogue, of course, like smoking and drinking, it's been, fairly easy or simple, I'd say, for some of my clients to stop, like even from day one, drinking and smoking. Working out, obviously the health, it's pretty simple. And I think a lot of people get in pretty good shape or lose weight through the process, because it's 6 months. And, as you're dialing in on your nutrition, your health, and starting to see yourself as a healthy person, then yeah, one of my clients said he's like the fittest he's ever been, and he's in his 50s, and he's like, even when I was in high school, like I think I'm the fittest I've ever been right now. So
that's got to feel amazing. Yeah. I'm not as fit as I was in high school, but a lot of it is because I'm fit now because of habits, because I define myself as somebody who is, one of my affirmations is I'm extremely fit and healthy, and I do those things to have optimal strength and endurance, not for my age, period. That's I want to be this fit till I drop at 150 or later. But you touched on something really interesting that I want to get back to. It's not just like eating right and getting enough sleep and stuff like that, and making your bed and stuff. It's this thing about your self-definition, what are those things that you're habitually telling yourself that are harmful? That are actually insidious in ways that people aren't even thinking about. Because you just say, why do you keep saying? Now, one of the things I talk to people about all the time is being introverts or being shy or being underconfident. And I said, like, you're not shy all the time. Stop telling yourself you're an introvert. We're a various mix of that stuff. You behave in a shy way or an introverted way sometimes. It's a behavior you exhibit. It's not a DNA type. It may have some subtle components of that, but mostly it's your choice. You can say, I'm done not being outgoing. I'm just going to talk to everybody and start talking to everybody. You can just say, this is what Sarah's going to tell you. Just start talking to people. Embrace the discomfort of talking to people, and you know what'll happen? You'll be comfortable. Eventually, you'll just go, I can chat up anybody because I just started doing it. It's not earth shattering. It doesn't take years of discipline. It just takes doing it. But there's a great phrase that I heard that is so much about what you're saying, and it's this: don't believe everything you think.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
This stuff that we think is not necessarily. So you got to stop and say, is this true? Is this actually true? I'm not, but people don't like me right away. Is that really true? Or is that a really not helpful inner critic belief that you don't even know where it came from a lot of times? But boy, it's playing in the background. It's your soundtrack. It's your very terrible soundtrack.
Yeah. I mean, you're so right. I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think one of the reasons why the process is so powerful is because many times we don't put our own soundtrack on the table until we have to confront it with other people. And, even just like that, my onboarding assessment, they haven't thought about these stuff. They haven't put it on paper and then discussed it with other people. It all kind of stays up on here. That's why journaling is so powerful, because if you were to write some of these things about yourself, it'd be kind of hard. It's so much easier for us to say it up here than to say, well, I'm not a good person. I'm, to be that down on yourself. But you made me think of another really important part of the transformation, which is you have to dig into why you have these habits, right? So through that process, there's a lot of self-reflection. And what people tend to do, why they have difficulty with change, is they tend to predict what's going to happen based on what they've done in the past. And what you have to do is totally forget the past. The past it has nothing to do with your future. Look at me. What I'm doing now, people that were in my environment that know me, it was nothing compared to who I used to be, So if I were to base my actions today on who I was 2 years ago, or, a year ago after my transformation, if I were to base it who I was in the past, well, it would have been someone who, goes back to smoking, someone who drinks, someone who parties. But instead, I had to look at myself from a higher view and start living through the future self. And that's something that's very difficult for people to do. It's very difficult for people to forget how they used to act and start living through their highest self, right? So you have to do a little bit of reframing on your past, okay? Well, that's it. I think it's hard, especially if, like, traumatic events. A lot of people have things that are keeping them stuck, like these negative self loops.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something that it's a big message for me as well. I really want people to stop making decisions on who they were and start making decisions on who they want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very powerful when especially if it's your past has some trauma or some intensity to it. Um, it's you're not defined by what happened to you. You're defined by how you decide to deal with it and move beyond it, move forward. And I'm not saying at all that that's easy, but I'm saying it's a choice to not cling to it, to not be defined by it, and say, today I'm going to be less defined by that. That some of my actions are not going to be defined by that I was abused as a child. Yeah, you had some terrible parentage there, but you got the rest of your life to live. So maybe you want to start that. And, easy for me to say, but not easy for anybody to do. But hey, doing the hard stuff is where all the great stuff comes from. Yeah. And including working on yourself, letting go and moving on from stuff that's not helping you anymore. The past impact doesn't have to impact the future.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And my message for people is just like, if you looked at my day and kind of the things I do, I'm not trying to flex or anything, but it's I do all the time blocking. I wake up at 4 and I've got a very strict routine. This is never who I was. I used to wake up at 7, kind of snooze, and I never had a morning routine. I mean, no, I'm almost like the polar opposite, of who I used to be. I used to, I still love my life. It's not like I was totally off the rocker. But in regards to like discipline and doing hard things, that was all things that I had to learn. I had to stop the victimhood and really take ownership of my life and get in the reps, right? Because once you do, and at the beginning it was all just what can I do that's hard? Let's just do, and then as I did a hard thing, everything else became easier, right? I stopped smoking, I stopped drinking. Okay, oh wow, that to me was like one of the hardest thing I'd done in my life at that time. I've been drinking for my entire life. I never, if you asked me 2 years ago, or if you told me my future, like, you're going to be coaching people on not drinking, I would be like,
yeah, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Why would how could that happen? Yeah.
You're like, yeah, right. I mean, so I really want people to know that it doesn't matter where you're at today. It just matters about getting in the reps and doing hard things and starting from, you mentioned earlier, you don't have to gradually change. You can do it right away. You can make drastic change. And I think it's important to note that, yes, you can start making changes and you can make drastic changes, but it's also very difficult because I don't want to advise people to start making drastic changes at first, unless you do have a coach or unless you're doing it, really, really taking it seriously, or, I do think it's better to have a coach when you do it. But the reason why people give up a lot of the times is because they try too drastically. And your identity will always try, your brain wants to exude as little energy as possible, right? You know this. It will do anything to not expend all of this energy on changing these habits that you've had that automatically come, that it's just been, your brain's been sitting on the couch doing nothing, right? Because you've been automated.
Yeah, your brain is an energy conservation system. Basically, it is trying to delegate everything to something habitual that it doesn't have to reprocess. Which is why, when you brush your teeth with your right hand, you don't have to say, I'm going to brush my teeth with my right hand, and I'm going to brush the upper arch and then the lower arch. The brain has already delegated that, and it's trying to conserve energy. And so you have to, and this is what I tell people is one of the things I talk about in my book is what you do every day towards your goal transforms you. It doesn't even matter how long you spend on it, Because what happens is your brain goes, oh crap, he's going to do this every day. So we're going to have to create a system for that. And the system is to delegate it so that you just do it. You don't have to decide whether you're going to do it or not. Just like brushing your teeth. Hopefully everybody out there is brushing their teeth. And suddenly it just happens. And you say, well, that was a lot easier than I thought. Just like, because we'll exaggerate it in our mind. Just like you said, if somebody told you 3 years ago, guess what? In 3 years, you won't be drinking at all. And you go, yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, I think you're talking about somebody else. But then all of a sudden, here it is. Suddenly it's true. I want to talk about your specific framework, which is the power method. If you want to give just an overview of that, because you obviously have created a system for this.
Yeah, so it's actually a good transition into the powers framework because you can make drastic changes. I do think there's elements which is what the power framework that it really entails that you need to be prefaced for, or that should be included when you're trying to do that, because your identity, your brain will try to pull you back so strongly, right, when you're trying. So the power framework is really what I was able to pull and think was the foundation for being able to live through your highest self and make those changes. And the first is key, which is perception, right? Because first you have to change your perception. It's very difficult to even be in a creative mood or to envision all of these possibilities of who you can be if you're on a negative self loop, and really being in a negative state of mind all the time is just your perception. Other people are seeing a different world than you are. So one thing I had to do, and which is the staple, is really the beginning of my framework, is to get everyone in a positive state of mind, to change your perception of the world that you're living in. And just that alone, you could really not do anything but just change your perception of it and start to see all the positive things instead of all the negatives. And that alone is life-changing, right? But it is essential to becoming your highest self, right? You have to give up the victimhood and start taking ownership. You basically have to change your perception of the world around you, and everything becomes brighter. And then your body, your mind is more clear. You're able to pursue the rest of everything, right? So the O is ownership. Then you have to take radical ownership of your life. I feel like I'd become stagnant for a long time in brokerage. I'd been in real estate for 15 years. I've just been doing the same things. I felt like I wanted something better, but I was just kind of waiting for it to come around. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't searching for anything. I wasn't doing anything different. And I really had to take ownership of, well, if I want something better, I've got to take ownership. I'm in control of my life and what happens to it, right? And it's a very intoxicating feeling, because once you start taking control and start making things happen, you start controlling your future, right? And so that's another very important aspect. If something bad happens to you, well, how did you react to it? Just like I think you mentioned earlier, what was your reaction to it? That's the most important part, not what happened to you. If it's out of your control, how are you going to react to it? How are you going to learn from it?
Well, and that's, I'll talk to people about this as well. As I said, one of the things I heard from Tony Robbins years ago was, the day you take responsibility for everything in your life is the day your life starts. And that was a real holy shit moment for me. And then I started to really understand it more deeply, because what it meant was my responsibility. It doesn't mean I'm going to take, if somebody crashed into me, broadsiding me in my car, I'm not going to take responsibility and say to the insurance company, no, it was my fault. It is my ability to choose my response ability to choose and say, okay, maybe I got to be paying. Maybe I was driving a little fast. Maybe, I got to see a chiropractor and maybe I need better deductible on my insurance. Maybe it just like sometimes, random stuff happen. Okay, now I'm going to translate it. Instead of being a victim, I'm going to say they could have killed me. A split second either way. Now I've had something similar to this, and a half a second backwards or forwards where I had been, that person could have easily killed me.
Wow.
So my ability to respond to that the accident, which destroyed my car, it rolled 3 times. But I walked away. My ability to respond to that is positive. It's like, I love this car. This car saved my life. I loved I got lucky. This is my lucky day. Instead of like, I can't believe she destroyed my car and now I got to get another car and my neck hurts and there's, people are going to think I'm a reckless driver and it's not me. It's like, you could choose your response. And if you learn how much you can and where you're thinking you can, those are the 2 places that you can isolate it. Okay, so now we're P and O. What's the W in power?
What's the W? The W is wisdom, because it's very important for people to understand the basis of human psychology and how your brain works. That your brain is energy conserving. Just enough basics to really understand why the identity tries to come back, how to change the identity. Because once you understand the mechanisms of your body, it gets much easier to navigate, right? Like if you understand how your car works, you're better suited to drive it. So another part of that wisdom is really learning about yourself. So I mentioned earlier, you have to really understand why you have the habits. Where did they come from? Or why are they serving you now? Or why did they serve you in the past? And are they still serving you now? So you really need to be open to learning about how your brain works, how your mind works, and how the brain and mind works, and then how personally yours works. Because everyone's different as well. Everyone has different motivations. Everyone has different habits. Everyone, has different goals. And so it's all particular to you. And I think journaling is a great way to do that. And then, to learn about yourself, therapy, just the coaching process. And then of course, wisdom, you can follow another program, like coaching program or a podcast or studying psychology, just really, reading books, of course, Atomic Habits. And there's so many habits and identity books out there. So.
Yeah. And the E?
The E is envision. You have to be able to
I was hoping it was eat whatever you want, but sometimes,
yeah. We can do that too. Maybe we can add an E at the end. It's envision.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to be able to envision that future self and have hope. And so that's a big part of the process, is really starting to envision your future self and living through that future self. Because we already briefed over really why I think that, but a lot of us are living through the past self. We're making our decisions based on our interpretation of who we have been instead of who we could be. And so envision is a very important part of that, of living through your highest self instead of your self.
And the R?
The R is very important, and it's one thing that it can be very difficult, and that is to redesign your future. A lot of people try to change what they do, and they try to change who they are, but they stay in the same place and in the same circles, in the same job, and around the same, So for me, if I wanted to become someone who didn't drink and didn't smoke, well, I had to stop hanging out with people that drink and smoke. You have to redesign your environment. I had to create the environment in my home. So it's very essential to have an environment that supports your highest self and doesn't support your former self, because your environment is a very, very strong indicator of who you are and who you will be. It will be very much, not that you can't, change everything about yourself without changing those things. It's not impossible, but it's much, much, much easier to have surroundings that support your new decisions and your new self and new beliefs, if that makes sense. If you want to make drastic change.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If you've designed an environment that supports more of your negative habits, then how are you going to stop yourself? And it's just the simplest analogy is, and you mentioned it already, is like if you don't want to eat junk food, don't buy it, because you're going to eat it, especially after 10 o'clock. It's like willpower is going to fade as with every hour closer to midnight until it's all gone. And so but what is your whole environment? Who are you associating with? Are you with people who are positive, uplifting, trying, growing, chasing opportunities, acting with integrity, uh, that and are kind, but in a way that says, like, let's go somewhere and we don't have to drink. If I were with you, I would say, great, we're in a bar. I'm not going to drink either. Let's hang out. We'll get a mocktail. This is the beauty of the bars now, is they figured out they got to make some mocktails. But that's like, I would want people around me that were going to support my habit.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up some of the other things as well, like positivity, doing hard things, taking action, because I don't want to just focus on bad habits like people that drink. Not that it's bad, you know what I'm saying, but
right.
But it's how they think as well, because when you start thinking really positively and you stop complaining, that's another thing. You take ownership, right? So you're not complaining anymore. You become so sensitive to complaining, and really, if you realize how desensitized you had been to your environment and other people that may have very negative mindset, or complain or be victims, right? And so if you're around that, you're going to tend to do it too, so
yeah. Oh yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up.
I had a friend that I met in improv comedy class, and he was extremely talented and incredibly intelligent, but my nickname for him was the negative spin doctor. He could put a gray cloud over anything, and I just eventually I said, like, I don't have the energy for this. I don't have the ability to lift myself up and constantly contradict you and say, it is actually a beautiful world full of challenges, and everybody's not out to get you. They don't have the time, so things like that. And so one of the things that you have to do is, like, what is your circle of people? Are they helping you get to who you want to become, or are they dragging you back down to who you don't want to be anymore? And it's, it sounds cruel, but the clock is running, man. Like, you don't know how long. I tell people, the clock is running, and you don't know how long the coach is going to let you play. So you better make every game you're playing count, because we are not granted another 70 years necessarily. So step up. Well, Sarah, this has been an amazing conversation. I really glad you are doing what you're doing, because I think it really helps people, and I really appreciate you talking about it this way and explaining it to my audience. Now, how does somebody get to you? Oh, you got one more, and you got another
Well,
thought?
it's ours.
Oh, there's an S. Oh, we gotta cover that. All right. What's the S?
We can just go briefly. I mean, it's pretty. I don't think it needs much explanation, but it's one of the most important parts, and that's self-belief. Because I think a lot of us have stopped believing in ourselves and believing that we can change. And like I said, we've been basing everything on the past, but you really have to believe that you have the ability to change and be able to pursue your goals. I think that can be very difficult for people. So really just getting that inspiration, that self-belief back is so powerful. You know, you can really do anything. Once you've been able to overcome all of these habits, I think you get so much self-belief in yourself from that. And that starts this beautiful, like almost a second transformation of like, I can do anything now, you know? Like, what do I want to tackle?
My self-belief has become, I'm a person who can change anything I want about myself.
Yeah.
That's an incredible thing to believe about yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no way that doesn't have to be, couldn't be true. It can absolutely be true. Yeah. So that's great. So how does somebody get individual coaching by you? How do they find you, Sarah?
Sure. I have Instagram. It's at Sarah Frances, Frances, Anane, Anane. It's just my name. And my website is sfa-coaching.com. So there's a little bit about my coaching program there. LinkedIn's my name as well. And my email is just Sarah at sfa-coaching.com. It's all there.
Yeah, so it will be in the show notes as well, so you'll be able to find her. And if you're just listening to the podcast, I'm going to spell everything for you. Sarah with an H, Frances with an ES, right? And Anane, which is ANANE.com.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Fred. It's been great to talk to you.
All right, everyone, start changing your self beliefs and your self definition, and boldly chase your dreams and the possibilities that you've envisioned for yourself.
Well,
Thanks,
thank
Sarah.
you very much. Bye.